This is Starfire, and it is a community building that is used for really great purposes for helping people that are trying to connect and need to connect in certain ways, and they just offered us their kitchen, so that's where we cook. Good evening. This is the fall of 2013, and our cooking class this evening is going to be something that we could use for Thanksgiving dinner. So we're going to do an apple crisp, which is really quick and really easy, and then we're also going to do some sweet potatoes. Also very quick, very easy, and people just absolutely love them. So for the apple crisp, we're going to start out with Granny Smith apples. They're the best. I've tried this recipe with a sweeter apple just because I had it on hand. It doesn't work. It doesn't taste good. The crumble crust on top is sweet, and the stir that you, the sugar that you stir the apples in over on the stove is pretty sweet. You really need the tartness of the Granny Smith apple. Plus, I love Granny Smith apples. So we're going to start, of course, by peeling our apples. And I have one here that is already peeled. And of course the next step is that we're going to dice them up into nice big pieces. These are starting to get a little bit brown. They've been sitting here for a few minutes, and you could put some lemon juice on them so that they don't get all the way brown. But since they're going into the oven, I don't really care if they get brown. We're going to let the butter melt a bit, and after it gets melted a little bit, then we're going to add our sugar. And so I need 2/3 cup of sugar. So the recipe calls for 2/3 cup of sugar. And this is 1 cup. That looks like about 2/3 cup. So I'm just going to let that melt in together, like so. You don't really want it on a high heat, although this isn't going to be working very well. This other burner. How are you doing over there, Allison?
Good. I was just going to let you in this.
Alright. And then the recipe calls for a teaspoon of cinnamon. So a teaspoon of cinnamon is really what fits in the palm of your hand. Okay, ladies, so the idea here is just to get it as smooth as you can. You want the, pardon me, you want the butter and the sugar, you want the sugar to melt, and you want the spices to become a part of the syrup, basically. Okay. And you just start stirring them around so that they get all covered with this delicious syrup. And then they're going to just get a little bit soft, which you'll see in a few minutes. We'll just kind of keep stirring them turning them like so until they're all nice and covered. And we'll just let them cook for a bit. That butter is really nice in there. Smells good, tastes good. Spatula is a little bit on the huge side. My other one was not clean. This is the one I use all the time, of course. Okay. Just let that simmer for a bit. Doesn't that look good? It just keeps looking better and better. Oh, now this is starting to bubble and brown nicely. You can see it's just really nice. Smells really good. Looks beautiful. Even like those little spots of green apple peel in there. I like the way that looks. Just looks really pretty. Smells really good. Alright, so now, as you can see, the apples are beautiful and all done. And so what we're going to do is pour them into a baking dish. I'm using an apple-shaped baking dish, which is very cool. And you're just going to put it all, just going to put it all in there along with the juice that we were just baking with, or that we were just sauteing the apples in. So we're just going to sort of spread that out because that juice that's in there right now is going to bubble up into our crust, and that's what's going to cause it to be a crumb crust that has a lot of good taste to it. I'm going to try to just use my rolling pin with them in the package, and that way I don't have to make a mess, but it might not work, it might break. But it could work. So I'm just going to start out by rolling them like so. I just heard it pop. Oh. It's no big deal if it doesn't work. So you would do this the same way that you would roll graham crackers. So you can use graham crackers for this recipe. I like these einkorn cookies. They're already ginger, and the ginger is awesome in the recipe. And they have einkorn flour, which is what I prefer because it comes from Italy, so it's not hyper-hybridized. It's actually tolerable for people, even a lot of people who have gluten intolerance. I'm not saying if you do have a gluten intolerance you should try this, but for people who are sensitive to wheat, it seems to be really workable for them. So you're going to have to resort to doing it between the paper. Not a big deal. Now the other way that you can do this recipe, and this is how I had it on the actual recipe on my website, is you can use flour, which I'll demonstrate in a moment, and rolled oats, which is the very traditional way of doing this. Or you can substitute hemp seed florets or shelled hemp seed, and they look like this. They add a lot of protein, they are really delicious, and they don't add a lot of carbohydrates. And you can see that from the way the recipe looks if you substitute the hemp. It's really cool. Tastes delicious, really, really good for you. Hemp has all kinds of amino acids in it. It's almost as good for you as coconut oil. Not quite, but almost. You know how fond I am of coconut oil. Now I'm going to add a half a cup of sugar, and I'm using coconut crystals sugar, and I'm going to mix that together a bit. And I've got the spices in there, I've got the cookie dough. You could use graham crackers, or You could use flour and rolled oats. The recipe can go either way. I like the cookies for the reasons that I described. And now the butter. And getting the butter to mix in there is a little bit tricky. It takes a little bit of work. I was going to use the hemp. I think I'm going to change my mind and use the rolled oats. Okay, so you see how this looks, guys? So you see how crumbly it is? Mm-hmm. Like so? Is you're starting to look that way? Good.
Nope. Definitely helped to my
Alright, so I said that I was going to use hemp in the recipe instead of the rolled oats, and I'm using the cookies instead of the flour, obviously. But I like the way this looks so much with just the cookies in, and I don't want to ruin the topping. It looks perfect right now. So I'm going to put a little bit of hemp into, just put a little bit of hemp in there because it's got such a great protein in it. I'm going to pour a little bit of hemp on top of the apples. That's assuming I can get them to come out of the bag. Alright, here we go. Let me just do this with a spoon. The hemp tastes really good. It has sort of a nutty flavor, so this would be like adding nuts. But you don't have to add the hemp if you don't want to. I just think it's delicious. And then all we do at this point is just spoon on the topping. Like so. Can you see? Mm-hmm. Mr. Videographer, Cody. Oh, this looks so yummy. And it is. And just spread it out evenly. Voila. Doesn't that look yummy? Alright. Dish this in the bowl. Alright, so step one is after you peel the sweet potatoes, you're going to put them in a pot of water. And you're only going to bring the water to a boil. That's called parboiling. So after they come to a boil, which this is a really big pot, so it's going to take a minute, then we're done. We're going to take them out, we're going to drain them, and then we're going to cut them into really thick slices. But this is step one. Put them in the water, bring them to a boil, then turn them off. Alright, go ahead and dump that in there. Awesome. And do we have any more ready to go into the pot? Okay, that's okay.
I have a little bag over here. Should I take it?
So I don't have salt on the recipe, but I always like the salt water when I'm doing something like this. Just put a little bit of salt in the water. I think it's good. Maybe like possibly a teaspoon. All right. Okay, so now these have come to a boil, our sweet potatoes. So we're just going to dump them into a colander, which I do have sitting in the bottom of the sink, rather. Yeah. The water is really hot, so I want to be very careful. Let's pick this up. It's not draining out. Okay. To move to the other side where it will drain out. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Awesome. So we have a lot of sweet potatoes. All right, so the first step or the next step rather, in the sweet potato bake is now that they have been parboiled, we're just gonna cut them into pretty thick slices. They're not all the way cooked, which is fine because we're gonna bake them. And they should be about 1 inch thick, like so. And you're gonna have some end pieces, which I'm just gonna mash those up and eat those for dinner tonight. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to put those on a cookie sheet that has been moistened with some coconut oil. So you take a little bit of your coconut oil and spread it on the cookie sheet. But then we're also going to make a little sort of sweetened version of the coconut oil to baste on. But just so they don't stick, put the coconut oil on our cookie sheet, place our big thick slices on the cookie sheet, and then we're going to make the basting sauce in a moment when we finish slicing. Okay, so now we're going to make the glaze for the sweet potatoes, and we're going to use unrefined, cold-pressed organic coconut oil, and we're going to use cinnamon and nutmeg, and we're just going to put that in the microwave. We're going to put the coconut oil in a little plastic cup and sweeten it with nutmeg and cinnamon and a little bit of salt. I think a little bit of sea salt is really good in there, and then we're going to use it as a basting medium. All right? So basically, all we're going to do is take our coconut oil, which we have put in the microwave, and add some cinnamon to it, and add some nutmeg to it, and stir it up. And it looks like that. It looks brown, brownish. Then we're going to take a baster and just baste them. And you can just kind of slop it all over the place. It doesn't really matter because it's going to get all over the place at some point anyway. And how you doing? All you need to do is put that in the microwave. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn these over and then baste them on the other side. Usually I bake them for about half the time and then turn them over. But right now I'm just going to go ahead and baste them on the other side. Like so. This is so good, and people absolutely love this at Thanksgiving. It's naturally sweet, because the sweet potatoes are sweet. If you wanted to, you could, by the way, put a tiny bit of sugar in here, but they don't really need it. They're just so good with just the coconut oil and the spices, the nutmeg and the cinnamon. And then after we do that, then we're just going to sprinkle a little bit on the top, just to make it pretty. So, yeah. And that is what they look like. Stick these in the oven. Alright, so now let's take a look and see how our sweet potatoes are doing. Oh yeah, they look good. They look really good. So, here are some little ones. Those look awesome. They could probably use maybe a couple more minutes. And here are some great big thick ones. And I think what I'm going to do with these is put them under the broiler for just a second, but I'm not going to do it right now. But you can see how delicious those look. And they taste yummy. They need to be a tad bit more brown. And sometimes the best way to do that is just to stick them under the broiler for just a few minutes. And that's it. We are done. Now the time has come to taste these babies. Mmm! Awesome. Those are so good. All right. Oh, we start off with one gigantic sweet potato.